Hello, everyone. It's been a long time, quite a while, since Becky and I did the question and answers, and we've decided that if we can do it, we should do it. So that's what we're going to do today. These are questions that CC members have given to their coordinators, and we've chosen the ones that come up first. So first come, first serve. So okay, I think to speed things up, Becky, over to you.
Hello. Okay, right. The first question is from Laura in Mexico, who asks, is the Black Sun Order part of the White Hats?
No, it's not. The Black Sun has a long history, goes right back through the Nazi times, goes even further back to Sumerian times, and is not part of the White Hat Order. I think the easiest way to answer is that they are diametrically opposed. The word white and the word black should be quite a clear link. I think that they are very different in their philosophy and their understanding. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Kimberly Gogan mentions that Jasara is a control system of human beings through social credit. Is this true?
Not to my knowledge. The Chinese Communist Party have attempted to do a control system using credit and finance based on things like facial recognition cameras. But Jasara and Nasara is a white hat operation, and we certainly wouldn't be involved in it if it was anything other than a good operation. So there is a great reset plan, which is the deep state, and then there's the Nasara Jasara plan, which is the white hats. So obviously we are interested in Nasara Jasara, and we're not interested in the great reset, which is the cabal's one. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is from within the USA. I'm not sure which state, from Kia. Becky, thank you for all you've done. Oh, my question for Simon. I know it's no thank you for you, but there you go. My question for Simon is, what is his timeline for hiring the US projects and projections on the timeline for medbeds?
So two separate questions. Both require funding.
Mm-hmm.
Funding from the RV revaluation. The way that it will work with connecting consciousness, the white hats will tell me certain countries are going to be activated. So although people talk about a shotgun start in terms of bondholders being funded, that's not how the projects are going to roll out. So the white hats will choose certain countries, and then the finance is released for those countries, and then CC will play its role, other organizations will play their role. So I can't give a timeline, because the timeline was when the RV occurs, and after that, when the funding for those projects comes through. What was the second question, Becky? I'm sorry. That was a two-part.
US projects and projections on the timeline for medbeds.
Oh, medbeds. Well, again, they are the purview of the military. There isn't a civil administration that has any authority over this. Technically, they're not supposed to even exist. How can you put something on the high street that technically doesn't exist? And what would the pharmaceutical industry say at the moment? What would the doctors say? So at the present time, they are traveling. They're in a cavalcade, and they're traveling, and they're going from certain city to certain city. And, that is how they're dealing with it until after the election. Then after the election, we've had the Chevron law overturned, which does have a big implication for things like the medbeds. But to be honest, we've got to see what happens on November the 5th, stroke November the 6th. And then medbeds and the rollout of medbeds is very dependent on what happens on the 5th and 6th of November.
Okay, thank you. So a question from Rasol, also Mexico. And this question many people asked. And I want to just say, actually, we've had over 400 questions from all around the world from members. just in the last 2 or 3 days when we said we were going to do this. So we can't answer all 400, but we've chosen some of the key ones that come up again and again. And this is one of them. Please explain and clarify what many spiritual channels and guides are saying about this second moon object or spaceship coming towards the Earth. Some say it's the real Anunnaki that are in it and shall be helping to straighten things out here, helping to purge the remaining Cabal Dark One's controllers from our planet, and guiding our new Terran leadership into restructuring our world, for the better, of course, and assisting with mass disclosure, re-education from orbit, though not on the ground. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, Planet X, there's no way the Anunnaki would be a benefit to humanity. So I'm not quite sure where that story is coming from. If you look back at the history of the Anunnaki, they weren't actually here to help humanity. They were here to maintain the status quo, which is the overlords and then the slaves underneath. I did have this question actually came up with, as you know, Becky, with our coordinators a couple of nights back. And they said, oh, we maybe have some further information. I didn't think I would. The information that I have is simply that I explained there were 3 radar imaging centers on the Earth run by the White Hats. One of them was the one that I visited back in 2013. And they have detected an object, but I haven't been privy either to see those scans or to even talk to an operator who is looking at it. You see, there are people that operate the machines, and then there are those that interpret the images they see. There are 2 different people. The person operating it has a very good idea, but those images go somewhere else in the Pentagon, the National Security Agency, to interpret what they're seeing. So the operator of that device, his or her job is to secure the best quality imagery that they can. So these phased arrays take fantastic pictures, maybe 250,000 miles out into space. Something has been detected. I haven't seen the image scans, and I haven't had the opportunity to have a feedback from anyone who's operated it or interpreted it. All I can say is that there has been an image which has come to the attention, but there are only a few civilian telescopes that could probably make something out. And I'm sure those people are being lent on very heavily to keep quiet. But the radio telescopes, like the old-fashioned one at Jodrell Bank in Britain and a couple of others, now they would get some sort of imagery, but we know that those are very well into the mesh of the control system of the good guys, and they won't be releasing any information at the moment. So first of all, the Anunnaki are not here to help us. They wouldn't work to assist us. They're not our friends. Secondly, something has turned up, but I don't know anything more than that.
Okay, thank you. And this is the final question from Mexico, I think, for today, from Jose Antonio, who says, hello, Simon. A lot has been said about the EBS, sometimes that it is necessary and other times that it is not. Lately, several channels have mentioned it as a fact. What do you think about it, and will it be worldwide?
Well, in the case of the value of the last 4 years, or nearly 4 years, that's been on so many commentators' lips in the alternative media that there would be an EBS. And I've always held the position that I do not believe there'll be a worldwide EBS. I will accept, and I have always accepted, that there is a possibility of an EBS within a city, or even in America, within a county. There may well be some areas in the United States that the National Guard have to be called out in. And then I do see the possibility of an EBS. The underlying question is more about the so-called 10 days of darkness, which is a very unfortunate term. And whoever coined that phrase very quickly realized it should have been 10 days of communication blackout, not to say 10 days of darkness, but it shows the poor thinking that was behind the initial generation of these stories. And I always say, and I'm sure there'll be more questions along this today, but I always say that somewhere there is a desk. I say a man. There's a desk and a man, Monday to Friday. This person sits at the desk and sends everything out, and then Saturday, Sunday, goes and has a little holiday and a day off, and all the news drops down again. Then he comes back on the Monday, and the news drops up again. So I've always been very skeptical of an EBS on a international or national or worldwide scale. I just don't see that occurring. I don't see the benefit of it. I don't buy in to supposedly educating people in the way that it's told about. If you accept, and not everybody does, but if you accept that 3/4 of the world do not think as we do, so they believe that 9/11 was what 9/11 was. They believe that Kennedy was assassinated in the way that he was, and they believe that Trump lost the election in 2020 fair and square. Does anybody listening to me today really think that if you subjected, and I use that word, if you subjected that group of people to a running reel of so-called videos or messages, do you actually think that would convince them? No, they won't watch it. They'll turn the telly off or hide the cell phone under the blankets of a bed, unless they're being proposed to force these people to watch it. The people who absolutely hate Trump are not going to believe anything that comes through, and these people believe everything that BBC or CNN or NBC or any of those. They believe what they tell them. If a message comes through on a cell phone, which doesn't have the usual presenter, because it won't, they're not going to believe it. So I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think if there was some very severe violent disorder downtown in one of the major cities in the United States, then the National Guard would be called out, and I think there could well be an EBS within a certain number of blocks. Because remember, as the Israelis have demonstrated so clearly, that the elite, both the good and the bad, have everyone's cell phone number. They can literally send you a message individually. So you might be in apartment 8 and someone next to you in apartment 9, you can get that message and they don't. That's how much the system controls everything. So EBS, yes, but not in the way that so many commentators are telling everyone that it will be. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. So Catherine from California asks, my question is, do you think that after the US presidential election, the House will vote to keep President Trump out because of insurrection and because of the number of votes will have to make Vance sitting president, at which point Vance can either rescue or recuse president of all charges, or everything will have to go back to the Supreme Court?
Okay, the question is assuming that the Democrats win the House. That's the whole question. The preface of this question is that the Democrats win the House. I don't see that happen. Look, I've got friends who are in the Trump campaign team, and without giving any facts or figures away, the private polling, because both the Republicans and the Democrats do private polling, just as all supposedly democratic parties do, and those figures that I have been shared are not the same as the mainstream is shared. So the private polling within the Republican Party does not match what mainstream is saying. So I would envisage a Republican increase in the Congress and also in the top house, the Senate. And I think that the rest of that question just falls apart then, because there will be enough Republicans in there to follow it through. In terms of the second question, which I can change a little bit, Trump becoming a sitting president, it would make it very difficult for any charges against him. And clearly the Supreme Court would make a judgment. So I would suggest that it would be taken out of the hands of the politicians, because that's partisan, and I think they would just be the Supreme Court would make a judgment. So my take on it is that I as it stands at the moment, from what I've seen, we are 2 weeks away. Things can change, but I would see a Republicans holding on to the House and Republicans gaining the Senate, in which case the question then becomes a legal question at a later level, which I believe the Supreme Court would sort out. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Catherine there said, thank you for so much for all that we do. Okay.
That's nice to have a thank you for.
It is, yes. Yeah. Next question is from Event Host D in Kansas. Why are the Northern Lights suddenly visible in Kansas?
Do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, I could do. Yeah, it's because of the increased solar flare activity and the fact that it's so much stronger now. So when the solar flare activity is weaker, any northern lights will be just closer to the North Pole. But now you can see them, or maybe the South Pole, but now you can see the northern lights throughout most of the northern hemisphere, and sometimes in the southern hemisphere too. It's been quite spectacular. And we should be seeing some more because we're in the sun hotspot time at the moment over these few weeks and months. So we should be seeing some more.
The term electromagnetic energy. Thank you, Becky.
Okay.
I know that you've been following that quite closely, and the answer you've given it to me is the right answer. Just to add to that, basically, humanity and all living life is being bathed in the most incredible emissions at the moment coming from the sun at a very incredible high vibration, and this is changing even some of the gravitational fields of Earth, and that's a key. And that is why suddenly in areas that you wouldn't normally experience the aurora borealis, northern lights, people are seeing it now. This is a positive thing. And you know, there was all these, again, the usual fear-mongering stories put out by very well-meaning folks that the internet would go down, you know, the TV would stop working and the cell phones wouldn't work, and it's all just BS. You know, the last 20 years in the main countries of the world, they have been proofing against electromagnetic emissions ever since the Russians, over 20 odd years ago, produced one of the first weapons that literally could fry computers within a certain radius, maybe 100 meters or so. And as soon as the Russians had that weapon, which they do, then there was a scramble amongst the major countries of the world to try and proof everything, even to the extent in the civilian structure where in normal poles in the sidewalk in the road carrying wires or cables, they were even putting insulation in 20 odd years ago to those. So it's something they've been very, very aware with. And it's just another incident where people are scaremongering. And of course, this was supposed to happen 3 or 4 days ago or a week ago. It didn't happen, but the energy did come across. And a lot of people are feeling a whole range of effects, literally sometimes headaches, sometimes lethargic. You know, you've been running a marathon when you haven't. But these actually are important things, because when a high frequency of energy, that's a good energy, is put to us, then the energy field, the auric field that we have, increases and moves with it. And there's a lag because our physical bodies are not made of energy in the same way, are more dense, and therefore they have to catch up. So, you know, there's an old saying, which is the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And that's a really interesting saying that, you know, we want to do it, but our bodies aren't quite there yet. Remember, this energy also hits the Earth, and the Earth is elevating, and a lot of the frequencies are are coming from the earth as well. So any living creature, and I include plants on that, is actually going through a tremendous change. So it's a very exciting time, and loss of a cell phone is very low on my mind at the moment.
Okay, thank you. I loved your further explanation.
Oh, thank you.
I just love watching the north or trying to follow the northern lights. So you know, they've been all around Britain as well, where we live. So a lot of people have been able to see them, sometimes for the first time.
First time. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that dog, by the way, is outside. It's not ours, so I can't do anything to stop it barking.
Okay,
I
well
think the
that's why
lady needs to take it for a walk and stop chatting with her friend.
that's why Merlin has jacked up. It's like, well, what's going on?
Happens every day. Yeah.
He thought it was coming from the screen, I think.
Oh. Okay, so the next question is from Suzanne in Switzerland. How does Simon feel about the Quantum Stellar Initiative, the QSI? I think many CC members are now involved with the QSI also, and I think there are a lot of parallels in the endeavours of CC and the QSI. So I think it'd be interesting to find out what QSI's position is on this and whether there is any cooperation, and basically because in the end everything comes together within Stellar, including the whole financial system, humanitarian and infrastructure projects, etc. What are your thoughts on this, Simon?
Well, we're not involved with that, and it was brought to my attention. There have been a number of websites or sites on Telegram, for instance, which have been targeting CC members, saying that they've got my permission. Well, they haven't, and I did put up a notice on simonparkes.org, basically saying that that is not me. I don't run that sort of website. I don't do that. We're saying that I'd sort of given approval. There are so many hackers and so many fake sites trying to cash in on people who have podcasts and have an audience. What I can say to you is that the future in terms of that isn't just digital. It isn't just crypto or digital. There is a tremendous place for paper money backed by precious metals or diamonds, resource-backed currency. And whilst many people, use some of these programs to carry barter, the vast majority don't. And I really do caution people, if you're seeing something on Telegram with my name in it, ignore it like that, because I'm not involved in that. And I remember Charlie Ward, some 2 years ago, when there was about 3 websites claiming to be him or claiming to be working on his behalf, and he had to do the same as I did. He had to put out a notice saying, "Look, this is not me." That's unfortunately, people don't have a normal job. They just do other things to make their money, and I just want people to be aware that don't get involved in it. That's not the way for the future. Think about the podcast I've done. How many times have I talked about that? How many times I've talked about it? And the answer is 0 or once. So if it was something that I was involved in or keen on, then I would talk about it, and the answer to this question wouldn't be the way it is now. So I'm glad that's come up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right. The next question is, what role does Switzerland play in Europe after the re-evaluation?
Oh, no, that's really interesting that they should ask, he or she should ask after the evaluation,
Mm-hmm.
which implies that they have some knowledge about its role during the re-evaluation. Maybe it's a banker. Do we have any bankers in our organization? I suppose we must have. There must be some good bankers somewhere in the world. Bless
Well, it's
them.
a Swiss member who's asked this.
Well, there you go. Maybe. All right. So Switzerland plays an incredible, important role now, this very moment. This run up to the RV, Switzerland is one of the key players. It always has been, because it's independent of a lot of international charters. It's very, very protective of who banks with them. You can bank with them and they will not really tell anyone else what's going on. So it's quite a safe environment. That's how they've made their name, because if people had their details given out, then nobody would bank with them, would they? So they are very important role now. Now the question is afterwards. Well, afterwards, when the money's distributed, so I don't think it's just about a money question, but I'll do the money side first. Switzerland will play a monitoring role in how those monies have gone out, how they're spent, and they'll have a key role to play with that. They'll also have a number of clients within the RV who are from different cultures, different countries, and different backgrounds. They also will have a number of VIPs connected to them. In terms of the population of Zurich, they'll be no different from the population of Germany in terms of the way they'll be treated, that they will have projects offered to them. They will have works done. Their governments will have to be more responsive and have to follow through certain changes. So the role of Zurich, which is now an enabler and an empowerer during the RV, that will end, but it will be just like any country. It will have to have resources put to it, and it will have to change the way it does certain things. That's a good question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So our next question is from Kim in Michigan, who asks, if one's family members are not truly aware of the foundation of how your humanity projects will be implemented and funded, is it best to just wait until after your NDA has expired to include them or hire them? Do they have to be a member of CC to work for you? Thank you. Much love, Simon.
I'm taking this that this question is not about me, but it's about for the originator. If you are successful and you have been given the green light to run a project, which is the project that you've created, you couldn't have anyone on there who didn't ascribe to the values that you have, because this person, it's not a mythical person, it's the person who's put the question, but it could also be a mythical person. If they've literally put a project together, then it isn't just the bones of that project, it's the spirituality, the energy behind it, because that individual is the driving force. Now, that I would not expect that person to have anybody on their project that didn't believe in what they believed in. You just wouldn't want it. I mean, you might have your dearly loved brother or your dearly loved sister or your children or your mother, and you love them very much and you want to involve them and you want them to be part of it. But if they don't believe in what you believe in, they will end up bringing your project down because they are coming at it from a completely different aspect. So it's got nothing to do with your NDA. You can't wait for your NDA and then recruit them, because you've got to recruit them to start with. And then during the life of the project, if people leave or you expand, that NDA is valid for the valid life of your project. And at the end of your project, if it doesn't go on for a further 10 years of funding, then you don't have an NDA, but you won't have a project. So it wouldn't matter. So that's looking at it, if I understand correctly, that it's about that individual who creates a project, not about me with my NDAs. So I've done my best to answer that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of questions because I've taken them out. I don't know where they're from in the world, but
Okay.
the first one is from Susan, who asks 3 questions about humanitarian. Oh, apologies, I've got one before that. I'll do this one first. Sorry,
fine. But you've had so many. We had 400. I mean, I'm amazed.
Yeah, so this one is from Eleanor in Ohio, who asks,
America, yeah.
could FEMA be attempting to hide the existence of experimental beings left in underground DUMBs, which are deep underground military bases that surfaced after the hurricane which hit the states like North Carolina and Tennessee? And is this why rescue efforts are being hindered? Or could the hurricane have been engineered as part of a land grab for valuable materials?
Well, that's a very clever question with a very hidden agenda there. And this is fine. I've got no problem with it. But I'm going to answer it without making the second answer a yes or a no, because it can't go down that road. A lot of people, quite rightly, have reported that FEMA and others have tried to prevent just ordinary people helping out. Or maybe it's a guy with an airplane, maybe it's a guy with a boat, and they're reporting that they've literally been threatened not to be able to help out. That doesn't seem very American at all. The reasons that I've got are simply because there were operations ongoing, and the last thing the White Hats wanted was a civilian with his own private helicopter as a good Samaritan trying to land because he thinks that there are people there who need help, and he would then witness things that the White Hats do not want him to witness. So that's one reason, and it's a very big reason for, I would say, 95% of the operations that have undergone. The more in-depth answer is there have indeed been bodies which have come to the surface, and some of them are decomposed and are very, very old, and some are just body parts that have come up. And again, the White Hats do not want unauthorized people who don't have the security clearance observing that, taking pictures and running back and trying to put that on the internet. So in the majority of cases, it was the White Hats preventing Good Samaritans precisely because national security, they weren't, in the White Hats' opinion, they weren't in their minds ready to see what they might see. They might have nervous breakdowns. They might emotionally not be able to cope with what they were seeing. And the last thing the White Hats want was to run around being a mother having to run around people who had just gone to pieces because what they'd seen, and they just want to be left to get on and deal with the operation. So the second part of the question I won't answer. I've answered the first part. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'll just ask a couple of questions from Austria next. Can Simon say whether the GCR or RV will start this year? That's from Werner in Austria.
Hmm. Yes.
Okay.
So,
Another question from Austria is about the floods, and this is from Lutz and Johanna in Austria.
I know that. Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, there are coordinators. So in September 2024, Austria and many other parts of Central Europe were hit by extensive flooding, which caused devastating damage and claimed several victims. At times, it seems as if help was not welcomed by authorities, and there were reports that helpers and first responders.
This is just like the other question. This is
Austria. Yeah.
I'm just going to defer to that answer.
Okay.
The other, sorry, Becky,
the other one was North Carolina.
Okay.
America.
You know the question that we took.
Yeah, the other one was North Carolina about the.
Yeah, was there any more questions from that person? Was that just the one that they put in?
No, that was it.
That was the one. So basically, the answer I've given there would work for Austria. It will work for Austria, except there wasn't the body parts. There weren't the decomposed bodies coming up. It was a much more straightforward type of thing, but the same answer gives for that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Right. So my next question is from Susan Moore from the East Coast, who asks 3 humanitarian project questions. The
Okay,
first question is, who decides which humanitarian projects are chosen?
I do.
Mhm.
At the first fall, shall we say, of the dice, I will throw out any projects that's just ridiculous.
Mhm.
Any projects that are, you know, accurate, well-meaning, the right energy behind them, I'd be very interested in. And sometimes an area will produce, 4 or 5 projects very similar. Maybe I'll try and amalgamate them, and those I will then send off to someone else. They'll have a look at them. They then make the second choice. They'll throw some out. That comes back, and then those be the ones that we work with. So I will do the first filter. There's a second filter done higher up the pipe, and then it comes back to me, and then we go with what we've got.
Okay, thank you. And how is the humanitarian project originator notified that their project has been chosen?
They will get an email.
Mhm. Will they get an email if it has not been chosen?
Yes, but that won't be as priority. I mean, the priority will be first of all to tell everyone who's got a project that's been authorized. That will happen first, and then a few days later, those that haven't been successful, they will get one. Now, what I would add to that is this is a 10-year program. So if somebody has a project and it's not successful, we would need to look at why it wasn't successful, what it fell on, and depending on just how short of the winning post it was, it might even be given a second chance to go back and look, just rejig that, just change that, take that out, put this in. If it's fallen very wide of the mark, well, I don't think I can do anything with it.
Okay. So
Okay.
who owns our humanitarian projects? CC or the people funding our projects?
Who owns it? Was that the
Yeah.
question? Who owns it? Okay. Well, you won't own it as an originator because you don't pay for it, but you will be an employee. You would be the originator, and you would be responsible for the spiritual direction of your project. So you can't be an accountant unless you are one, or an architect or a construction engineer, and those people have to be brought in. So you will contract with those people, but you will be providing the spiritual guidance. You won't be, necessarily saying, 10,000 bricks were delivered and, you're supposed to deliver 11,000. You'll have experts to do that, but that's the job of overseeing from the spiritual aspect. You won't own it. I won't own it, but the people who pay for it own it. That's what happens on this planet. He or she who has the money owns it. But what they will do is give the originator the role of manager. My role will be, as head of this organization, will be to find people in each country, in each state in the United States, or some other countries have states, don't they? Germany does, to provide teams that will turn up unannounced to the project, not to check your books. Accountants will do that, but to check that from the spiritual side. Is it a warm and welcoming environment? Are people being treated fairly? Do we get a good feeling for this project? So our role for checking will be on the spiritual side, whereas those that provide the funding, they'll be a much more practical side, as you would expect. So looking at the outputs, how many people have you actually helped? What monies have you spent on this? Now, I don't want to mix up with the spiritual side, so they can do that. They're the experts. But what our teams will go in unannounced is literally, are you open? You say you're open, Monday to Friday. Are you really open? And talking to people who've used the service, were they polite to you? Were they helpful to you? Does it a good experience? But that individual who's the originator will be paid for what they do. So it's a fantastic opportunity to bring help and assistance to a wider group of humanity than perhaps you'd ever dreamed that you could do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, this question is from Michelle, also from the East Coast of the USA.
Okay.
You have mentioned in the past the RV will not take place, the process steps, as the US commentators are stating. Can you tell us how the RV will happen, or the process we will go through to exchange our foreign currencies? Thank you.
Well, I see two parts of the question. It's not the hardest question been asked so far, but it's the question that requires the most detailed answer. Right. There are a number of characters who really do put themselves out. They work incredibly hard. Sometimes they do 2 days a week. Sometimes they do every day, and they put podcasts out, or they do calls, or whatever it is, and they talk about the RV. I guess talk facts. I've got to just talk facts. None of them have NDAs. None of them have an NDA. They rely on information from others who may or may not have NDAs. The first question I would do is, why would somebody with an NDA give information to somebody who does not have an NDA, knowing full well they would publish that amongst the people who don't have an NDA? See, if you look at a war situation, you always work on what we call a need to know. Everyone's compartmentalized. You don't need to know that. I mean, if you ever anyone knows about briefings in the Pentagon, you could have a team of, and those of you who are veterans, you'll know all about this. You have a team of 5 or 6, and you're talking on the topic, and then the director will say, actually, A and B have got to leave the room now because they're not cleared to that particular level. So A and B have to go out, and you do it, then you bring A and B back. I mean, it's really like that. It's a really time consuming, and you may have an hour for a meeting, but you maybe only get through a small amount of it because you're continually having to say, either I don't take this question and I keep A and B in here, or I take it and they have to leave. And then you have to get someone else in. Oh, we need such and such. Well, he's down on the 3rd floor. Get him up here. So if you have experience of that, and I have, and if you understand that, then it seems incomprehensible to me that somebody at a high operating level would give information to somebody who is not military, not ex-military, doesn't have an NDA, isn't part of the group, knowing full well they're going to spread that out through the public. So hold on to that thought. Now hold on to this thought, that for the last 4 years plus, those same people have told you it's happening tomorrow. It's going to happen on Thursday. No, it's going to happen on Tuesday. It's going to happen on Wednesday. And the dates miss. Certain characters, I'm not going to mention names because that's just not professional, but certain people say, it's happened. It's happened. I'm overjoyed. I'm emotional. It's happened. And then, well, it hasn't happened, but it's going to happen. And then this is our week. This is our week. And the last 3 or 4 months, it's been our week. Or the other characters are saying there's restitution that's going to pensions, or your social security is going to go up. Oh, it didn't happen last month. It didn't happen that month. So anyone who's sensible would say the information I'm getting is BS, because it's been promising all of these things for months, if not years. But that's because you've got people who do not hold NDAs doing conversation. I have 5 NDAs. My first NDA was the major overall NDA with the RV and all the stuff that goes with it. The other NDAs are smaller, about historical assets. And if you don't know what a historical asset is, well, that's something you might want to look into. So my take on it is completely different from a lot of these people, simply because the communications I have are with people who are responsible for what's going on, not people who are part of a propaganda machine. I've talked about this magical desk. where, you know, Monday to Friday, this information is churned out, and then Saturday, Sunday, this guy goes home and he comes back and he does it. And I'll give an example of the war in Ukraine. When there's something going on in Israel, God knows there's been a lot going on, hasn't there? And the Arab states. You notice that the news from Ukraine drops off. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 or 4 days old news. And that's because somebody is looking at certain aspects of news to push out. Now, in real world, in Great Britain and in Germany, and in the Low Countries, in the First World War and in the Second World War, fighting continued 365 days. The Christmas Day wasn't a break, except the First World War, where they all played football. Brits and the Germans played football. But a real war doesn't have a boundary of time, days. You know, Sunday we don't fight on Sunday. No, that's not true. Yet, if you look at what's happening, the news that we're getting is being managed. And in the same way, I believe alternative news is being managed. All right. And I remember, I've used his name already once, I'll do Charlie Ward again. Charlie Ward said to me that he was sick to the back teeth. This is 3 years ago. People asking him about the redemption centres as payments for the RV. And when we were doing a podcast live, I think Charlie used to do some live ones. We were doing a live one, and he said to me off the cuff, Simon, how many RV redemption centres are there? Right. So I think I named 5 or 6. I can't remember. He chimed in with another one. What he was really saying is there aren't hundreds of redemption centres. There are only a handful, and they're not redemption centres. These are HQs that manage software, phone calls from banks, the Chinese elders, paymasters, and have meetings and sort out things and look at the codes, the logarithms, projections for the future, the IMF, all of those things. Those take place in those centers. They're not places where people go in and exchange. So he, like me, did not believe in a concept of redemption centers in the way that some commentators are saying. Now, again, I'm not going to say the person's name, but I think it's highly irresponsible for people to say to others that if they have currency or old defunct Zim notes, they are going to get billions. I mean, I have heard personally one individual on 2 occasions on his podcasts say, well, you could move $1 billion from this to your Wells Fargo's account. You can have 3 Wells Fargo's account and you can move $1 billion to it. Those are people who are listening to me who, if you're lucky enough to have a job and you're lucky enough to have had a reasonable life, you must ask yourself, how likely is it that anybody that I don't know is going to give me $1 billion? And the answer is, it's just not going to happen. And why is it always just America? Why does nobody talk about redemption centers in Great Britain, France, in Germany, in South Africa, South America? Why is it just America? If this truly was what it's supposed to be, it would be worldwide. But it's only America that talks about redemption centers. So here's the pattern: that somebody goes on a very well-known auction site, I'm not going to mention the name, goes on a very well auction site and buys 3 Zim notes or buys so much, I don't know, Iraqi dinar. They then believe if they put it in a cupboard, magically, someone will then give them an 0800 number and they get paid. Now, third time lucky, I'm going to use Charlie Ward again, third time lucky. Charlie once was told by people who listened to his show that they had heard, this is 2 years ago, that the RV had started. Well, it hadn't. It was just another fake, false rumor. and they rushed to Wells Fargo with their Zim notes and their dinar. And they went to the teller, and of course the teller just said, "I don't know what you're talking about. We don't know anything about this." It wasn't rude. The teller wasn't rude to them. Just said, "I'm sorry, we have no idea what you're talking about. Don't know." So they came out very, very upset, and they wrote to Charlie Ward and said, "Yeah, but how does anybody know who we are? We're going to get our money. We've got these Zim notes. We've got these dinars, but how do they know who we are to call us in to give us the money?" And Charlie Ward wrote back, and his exact words were, "God knows." It's a very clever answer. God knows. There are some people who say if you buy notes from an auction site, your details are taken and then given to the white hats, and they'll contact you. I tell you why that's not right, because you don't give permission to somebody else to take your details. It's illegal. If you buy, say, 3 Zim notes from a well-known auction house, I really believe that the person you bought them from somehow electronically is either going to be hacked by the white hats or give us the information to the white hats, and you haven't given permission for that. We talk about Starlink, we talk about all these things about encrypting. The white hats are absolutely red hot, and anybody who's used PayPal or anything the last few weeks, you must be absolutely sick and tired to the back teeth with your cell phone, your mobile phone, asking you for a code number. That's because we're moving into the new system to prevent hackers and try and make it as safe as possible. So a lot of this stuff is just, unfortunately, make-believe. There would be no need for connecting consciousness in terms of projects if everyone was given $1 billion who had a note. You wouldn't need us to do it. You would just go and do it yourself, wouldn't you? And the other part that falls down flat on its face is that these commentators with a straight face say you're going to get $1 billion or whatever it is, and then you're going to do an NDA. Do you honestly, genuinely think that someone's going to give someone $1 billion and say, "Hey, hang on a minute, just sign this NDA"? Okay, my mother and I were well known to the white hats for years and years, and I've said it before that when my mother joined what was MI5 and through that to the National Security Agency, they followed her for months before they actually offered her a position in their organization. For months they followed her. They wanted to know what her routine was, who she spoke to, what type of tea she drank, all of that. And only when they had thoroughly researched her and they felt confident would they offer her to sign the Official Secrets Act in Great Britain. And yet we've got commentators who don't have an NDA between them telling the American people that you'll get $1 billion and then, oh yeah, you'll just sign this NDA. When I know for a fact that one of the key aspects of this is to prevent money falling into the very same hands of the people that the good guys have been fighting against. So no, I don't believe in redemption centers. I don't believe that an individual can go and get billions of dollars because they've gone and bought something on a website. And I have spoken to the head of the civilian RV operation, and they have told me that about between 75 and 85% of Iraqi dinars and Zim notes sold on the major auction houses are fake. And that when they go through the Dollaroo machines, you know, they just would show up. And I know, I've not spoken to the gentleman concerned, but I've spoken to another person who spoke to the gentleman concerned, who is responsible for some of the security. And I understand that 60% of the files that this person has had presented to them have had to be thrown out because they were fake. So I really, really, really think that these people pushing this are doing a terrible disservice. I'd be happy if I'm wrong. I really would be happy, because it would mean, there's 1 million people in the tier 4B internet group. 1 million. That's the white hats have told me. There's 1 million. So do you think 1 million people are going to get $1 billion each? And I have been very, very clear, and so have other people who are more connected, that this isn't how we see it. And I feel it'll be very interesting for individuals who push this line and said what they've said, and it doesn't come to fruition. They'll have to grow a beard. They'll have to move. They'll have to disappear. I mean, there's one character who said, he's been quite open about it. When he gets his dragon bond, he's off until January. He's made that very clear. He's off. I and my organization have been very clear that we do not subscribe to that point of view, because the people who gave me the NDAs have said to me point blank, that ain't going to happen, Simon. So I'm sorry for the long answer, but that was a very, very key question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very full answer. So hopefully that will, make people happy with that, or at least not make them happy, but satisfy their curiosity and clear their understanding.
What I hope it will do, I know what you mean, Becky. Yeah. I get what you mean. What I hope it will do is it will look in the Bible. Again, I haven't mentioned any names, so let's make that clear. I've not mentioned anyone's name, but in the Bible there are what we call false prophets, people who promise the earth. Right, it's very clear in the Bible. The false prophets, either something's going to happen or this, that, and the other, and when it comes to it, it never did. And those people were designed to lead a group of people who were otherwise really good down a dead end road. So we don't give it too much focus. I've been asked a direct question. I won't run away from it. And that is why, God, 4 years ago, more than 4 years ago, we set up the thing with the white hats for the projects. So basically, our members generate projects, and if they're successful, then those projects are funded. And that's the way it worked. It goes right back to 2015, when I was on a Skype or a Zoom call with one of the Chinese elders, who outlined to me in 2015 how they thought it was going to work. And people have said there's so much benefits coming to humanity, and I do believe in the social security money going up. I think that will happen. I think taxes will be reduced. I think big government will reduce hugely. I think Elon Musk has got a fantastic role to play in the future in a Trump administration. I hope he accepts the role. And people will be so much better off. They won't be worried about, can I pay the rent, mortgage? Can I put gas in the car? Can I do this? Can I do that? But getting $1 billion was fairyland. It just doesn't happen, and it won't happen, because who are all these people? How does anybody know that someone should go into a redemption center and get $1 billion, then doesn't go straight away and give it to the deep state? They're a front person for the deep state. There are ships with container boxes, container loads of dinar, which have not been accepted because of the provenance of that, because the good guys know where that's come from. Right, so thank you. Let's go on to another one.
All right, okay, thank you very much. Right, changing tack completely, the Akasha Chronicles, and this is from Ruth in Austria. I have a question about the Akasha Chronicles. David Icke writes that this is part of the matrix of the dark beings in the fourth dimension, so that channeling the Akashic records does not bring real insights, but we only get fake information. What does Simon think about this view?
I've never met David Icke. He didn't want to seem to meet me. There is a real Akashic records, and there's Akashic records for each soul. So each individual, if they are able to tap into themselves, they can read the Akashic records from their standpoint. That's the key. From their standpoint, there is a universal or multi-universal Akashic records that keeps the records from that group. What I believe is that the bad guys have attempted to hack the Akashic and to put in the fake stories. Now, I haven't talked about Lord of the Rings for a long time, and those of you who can remember 5-6 years ago when I used to talk, I mentioned it, and I will do. Those of you who haven't read the Lord of the Rings, it's not going to mean anything to you. So in the story, there are a number of seeing stones, a bit like what used to be called gypsies' crystal balls. They were called the Palantir. And there are a number of these across this made-up world, Middle Earth. But leaders in these towers could access these and they could communicate. And what in the story Sauron did was he hacked into it. And so Denethor, who was the steward of Gondor, he sent fake images to Denethor showing that the baddies were going to win. And it actually destroyed Denethor's will and his belief. So when Ike is saying that he's accurate, I think he's accurate. That what's happened is that the Akashic, or some element of it, has been hacked so that a false image or false picture is being given. But I don't believe that the Akashic was set up by the bad guys. I think it is any living entity has an expression of itself. And therefore, within each multiverse, each universe within the multiverse, it has its own third dimension, fourth, fifth, sixth, so on, has its own Akashic. But of course, if you were to observe it, many people can. Many people can. So don't laugh if someone says to you they've accessed the Akashic. In fact, Becky, you're remembering when we were at Miles Johnson's conference at Marlborough. Was that 2016?
Oh, 2014, that one was.
2014. Okay, so you remember when Lord Ivars came up to us?
Yeah.
Okay, and Lord Ivars, said he used to work for the CIA, and he now was, a freelancer, and he wanted to buy me lunch. That's so funny. And he said, for those who haven't heard this one before, that's why I called you over, Becky, because I wanted an independent witness to it. And he was quite a nice guy. He just said, you've come across my radar because my employers have sent me to talk to you. So I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting. Let's see what this is about. And he said, I've got a question from my employers, but they also got the present. And those of you who have heard this, that I was offered bullet and bomb resistant, blacked out vehicles, armed guards. And he said, if the world goes to shit, there's a place beneath Salisbury Plain, which is in England, where there's a bunker. And he says, we normally charge $1 million per person, but for you and your loved ones, it's free. So he said, but I do have a question for you. Now, the question was on the Akashic. He actually asked me he said to me, when you view the Akashic, he said, my employers want to know, he asked a question, which I'm not going to go into, but he wanted to know how I viewed it and what I saw. It was such a complicated question that it took me 3 times to answer it that day. And then in the morning in the car park, because he was already waiting for me in the morning. And then so 3 times it took that because it was such a complex question. So it is worth studying, but you have to be able to discern what's inserted, what's fake, and what is genuine. So that's my answer to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, this question is from Meredith in Montana, USA. How worried should I be in the event that the deep state turns off the switch to America, as Tucker Carlson's interview has been on practically every disaster video shown lately? I do understand that these natural disasters are as a result of HAARP, but I have dear friends that were affected. Does he think we will be without power long enough to lose all that we have been prepared for, or will the electricity be left on so that the EBS can be heard by all to awaken the public?
If we start our daily life at that level of worry, we're not going to achieve very much, because we are limiting ourselves to our own belief systems, and we are bringing to us negativity. So, for what it's worth, my answer is you shouldn't be worried. The normies, the normal people who unfortunately don't listen to podcasts like mine, they lap it all up. They love it because they love to be terrified. Who was it who told us that bad news sells newspapers? And the more the normies become destabilized, the more both sides, evil and good, can do stuff. And I think that our standpoint should be that if we hope for the best, we'll get the best. And if we believe that light is stronger than dark and good is stronger than evil, that's what we'll get. Tucker Carlson is a remarkable man and plays a fantastic role like Elon Musk does. So we should perhaps ask ourselves, what are these guys' roles? What is their role? What do they do to move the narrative forward? And I don't allow that sort of stuff into this house. I don't encourage it. It gets in here, unfortunately, but I don't encourage it because you're going to, because there's phones and there's laptops and there's all of it. There's people. But ultimately, all of that is not aimed at us. And I'm talking about the audience. It's not aimed for you. That's not information for you. That's information aimed at people who are not at your level. Oh dear me, I can't hear the EBS because I've stuck cotton wool in my ears. Okay. Why do we need to hear an EBS? Why do you need to hear an EBS? Why do you need to sit for 8 hours? Why should you be forced to sit and watch 10 days of darkness of the fall of the cabal because your next door neighbor needs to watch it? Why should you be subjected to that? So I don't go down this road. I don't believe in that. I think what will happen is there will be an election. I've talked about it with our teams. I've always said it was, first of all, 60-40 that we go to an election. That was 2 years ago. And then about 3 months ago, I narrowed it and I said 80% there'll be an election, 20% there'll be a problem. Okay, so I'm very strong that we're going to go to an election. Yeah, of course, people will cause a problem. But I think it will be such a huge resounding result that it will pull the carpet from under the feet of the bad guys. So I'm glad that question was asked, because there are a lot of members who are worried about other people. What do the White Hats say to me? They say, worry about your family and your friends. That's always about that. Look after yourself, Simon, your family and your friends. Now, I have an organization to look after, but I can only offer advice and direction. I can't, and I wouldn't want to look after everybody. People have got to be sovereign beings and decide where they stand on this. And you either get sucked down the road of despair, disaster, or you say, I'm not having any of that. I want a fantastic life, and that's what I'm going to have. And that's where we stand.
Okay, thank you. And following on from that, this question is from Scotland. Does Simon have any idea when the EBS will be announced, and when will pensioners get their decent pension benefits?
Two remarkably different questions. That's the beauty of CC, I think. We're so diverse. Well, not going to happen until the election. And anyone promising anyone there's going to be this, that, and the other has proved wrong. There's that one character who's been saying it's going to happen for the last 5 months. And it's so straightforward. Why would anybody get a back check, tax reduction, all of this for the current administration in America to claim it as their work? Well, he just wouldn't. It's just nonsensical. Because if there was a 50% increase in pensions, the Biden administration would say, yeah, we did that. I can assure you the White Hats are not going to do anything that would allow Kamala Harris or Biden to claim it. So all of this depends on Trump winning an election. So yeah,
But
there will be a
this is in Scotland, though.
yeah, I know, but America rules the world.
Mm.
No country is going to do something until America tells it can do it. Now, that might be a shock to most people. And I just remind you that 2013, when I was very privileged to get a 2.5 hour tour around the Fylingdales Space Radar Base, and there were 30 of us, and I was the only non-military person serving, though the other member of my family who was there was actually working with a military organization. I was the only person who wasn't. And I am answering this question, but I need to give you the background. The guy who was leading it was a Flight Lieutenant Wicks, had taken the 29 people around the tour of the command room. And me being me, I thought, well, I'm not going to go around and have the bloody guided tour, because you only get told what they want to tell you. So I went off on my own, and I thought, if they don't like it, they'll call me back. So I went up, and there were the guys sitting there, and I thought, I'll see how open they are without the minder standing by the side. There was a big red phone, and on it were about 30 buttons. And I said, what's that? And he said, oh, that's the hotline. It was a red phone hotline to every American Air Force base in the world. And I looked, and I could see most were printed, and some had been changed, the numbers, and were written in biro. One said Vandenberg. I definitely remember Vandenberg. And then there was a big, massive red phone with a huge red box. And I said, what's that? And he said, that goes through to the president. So I then said, looking across the way there, this glass panel, there are two guys behind there, and there's a key code lock. And I said, who are they? And the guy said, oh, they're the Americans, right? Because everyone, it's a British facility. So I said, oh, what do they do? And what he said to me was, well, every time there's a UFO, we have to get up, walk out. They come out of their door. They take charge of this facility. They do what they do, and then they let us back in again. That's how America rules the world. I mean, that's phenomenal. And I said to him, why are you telling me this? So he said, well, because we expected you to ask these questions. And I said, yeah, but I could have been with that group. And he said, well, in which case we wouldn't have answered them. Fascinating. So basically, America dictates to the world what it does. So going back to Scotland, the First Minister will not do anything of Scotland until the British Prime Minister gets his okay from someone in America. Of course, the public are never told that. So that will happen later on in 2025. Certainly the EBS have answered that one. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this question is from the west of the USA, and it's a CC question.
Lovely.
Will there still be a CC group of people outside from the people choosing to work in or on humanitarian projects? So will we still have the regular CC structure with coordinators and volunteers and people meeting up for meetings and the spiritual topics and so on?
Well, without that, there would be no projects. So projects are not more important than what we're doing at the moment. Projects are merely an expression of what we believe in. So if we were to say, right, we're going to have no more meetings, we're not going to have coordinators, we don't want event hosts, we don't want admin, all we're going to do is that, the White Hats would say to me, goodbye. Because what they are investing in is not just projects, but the continued high vibrational energy that this organization produces. Because if we were to switch off, then what would happen to all these projects? Would they just dissolve into a standard type of corporation, a standard type of project? I'm sure the people who are running them would be lovely. But the whole point about our organization is that they are connected to us. Because if someone's running a project and they say, I'm leaving CC, the White Hats will just pull the money out. Oh, that's it, goodbye. because they're not funding that individual. Basically, they're giving me the money to fund this organization and to fund the projects. And remember also that in the plan, we want to pay our coordinators, we want to pay our admin, we want to pay on an hourly rate those event hosts. We want this to become a paid organization. And on that, when the RV takes place, I will have a conversation with an individual who will set up a trust for connecting consciousness, which allows me then to employ people. It allows me then to work out with other countries how non-profits work. Remember, it's completely different in America than it is in Germany. But we, as the head office is where I and Becky sit, wherever that may be, whether it's a tent in Scotland or in Ireland or Wales or England, wherever we are is the HQ. And I remember, Becky, you remember when the United States Marine and Naval Intelligence Officer visited us and said,
Yeah.
sitting in the kitchen, and that person said, I am sitting in the HQ of Connecting Consciousness. Do you remember that?
I
You remember
do.
that? Right.
Yeah, our dining room table, yeah.
That's right. Right. So that's how they see it. That's how they see it. That's how they see it. And without that structure, they're not interested. Now, what we will have to do is change the way we manage the organization, but that's another bridge to be had. So, very good question. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the training and support of our volunteers, we're doing this already with the facilitation skills. Our volunteers are getting really good training and support, and the spiritual topics that we are developing within CC are really important, and also the guest speaker process as well, where we're bringing in, education and information for our members. This is all stuff that we're going to develop further. So it's very exciting.
I've tried to make it clear amongst our organization that any coordinator who doesn't see the value in spiritual topics and doesn't see the value in discussing them fully with their membership within that area, they've got no part to play in our future, because that's the core role. Starting up projects only comes because we have a connection to spirituality. You don't start a project up and then become spiritual. You start a project because you're spiritual.
It's an expression of this, yeah, it's expression of an individual's spirituality. And the spiritual topics are very much about personal development, and it's a very personal journey. That's something that we do talk about all the way through. It's not about us telling someone what should be. It's about giving information out and sharing ideas and enabling
it's giving people a
topic, topics in group.
It's like writers. They look at a blank sheet of paper and they struggle. All we're doing is giving people a topic and then a lean into that with some of the aspects from Earth's history or what have you. And it's down to the coordinators to build on and to actually fire up the enthusiasm of the members. And that for me shows me whether a coordinator is actually on board or not. It shows me whether they get it or they're just along for what they think is an easy ride. And it's going to be a shock for some people, I'm sure, when the time comes. But the reality is that what you have done, nobody else could have done. That's why I asked you to do it, because no one else could have done what you've done. No one else has got the respect or the love that this organization has for you. And also, you're uncorrupted by all the crap that is in the energy fields. And therefore, when you've done the spiritual topics, you've actually done it in a very pure way. And that's why it's vital. And so projects are important, but they are a physical expression and they are not separate. They are part of, what we, that's you and I, what we've created.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the next question is from Frank in northeast of USA, or in New Jersey.
Okay, all right.
We
Tough
have
area.
heard that the frequency and vibration of the bells repels demonic beings. And also, I'm going to add that ringing of church bells is known to break up storms and dispel even tornadoes. Because the sound frequency is so powerful that comes
But
from.
you know the answer to that. You do know the answer to that. It's something
The
you
answer
know.
is yes. The frequency and vibration of bells does repel demonic
The
beings.
answer is yes, but there is some stuff that you don't know. And I'll just say it that in 1939 in Great Britain, uh, people who know a lot more than they let on said that they would alert the British people to any German invasion by ringing of church bells when there was an adequate air raid siren. Now, they knew that what they were looking at was the frequency of the human beings in Britain. It was to dispel the fear and the concern of German paratroopers landing all over Britain, because all they had to do was sound an air raid siren, or say if the air raid siren does 3 short bips and then 1 long bip, we've got paratroopers coming. But they didn't. They said church bells, that Britain was being invaded, and this was to break away any energy that was negative and make people more secure. So that's something that's known in the story of Dick Whittington, a character very close to my heart. Dick Whittington hears the Bow bells ringing, church bells ringing, and imparts a message from that, which changes his life forever, and indeed the life of many Londoners. It's not widely known that Dick Whittington, when he died, was the wealthiest man in England, and gave a huge amount to good charities. And so frequency not only can bring down the walls of Jericho, but what it can do is destabilize elements of negative force, providing that the device that makes that sound is not an evil device. You talk about, bloody Dr. Joseph Goebbels before the Second World War, who altered the German the music industry so that they had to actually dumb down on middle C and the rest of it, the frequencies, and you know about that, Becky. And so the baddies and the goodies have known that frequency can both be uplifting and it can be destructive. So providing bells have been made with a decent intent, they can actually dispel or displace negative forces. Was there a second part to the question, or was that it?
No, that was it.
Go on in.
Right, okay. We've just got a couple more questions, I think.
Okay.
Oh, I
Okay.
beg your pardon. There is another part for this question, and it's really good. So,
Go
could
on.
it also be that any sound, even in the human voice, such as the vibration of laughter or singing, might also repel the demonic beings? Curious if it goes just beyond bell ringing.
Oh, well, if someone like a black magician has a demonic entity in their body, no, it won't. If the person is a good person and has a high vibration, then that will work, providing the individual believes in what they're doing. Many people laugh and they don't mean it. They're laughing because they're in a social environment that they believed they needed to laugh at that point. Somebody cracked a joke and they thought they should laugh. That won't work. It have to come from the heart. It has to be believed. It has to be true.
True,
And if,
joyful, yeah, true, joyful laughter
well, that's true.
will definitely raise one's vibration. Um,
Yes, and others around. That's the key. Why do you think certain people draw huge audiences to the theatre or to the singing? I'm not talking about the cabal type singers. Where a person who's genuine makes others feel better. And that's because the frequency that they carry, they were always supposed to carry that frequency. They were supposed to be a messenger, and they were supposed to be able to have a fighting chance to get the truth through, because there's so much negativity that, like a great load of wadding, that tries to prevent that frequency coming through. So by the time it reaches, it's quite weak. And so therefore, if you can project truth, and it does reach the right person, it sets them on their own research. It doesn't brainwash them. It just says, I think I'll go and look into that, and that sounds right. So any frequency, any sound is important. And
And this question, oh, sorry to
no,
interrupt.
no,
This
go on.
question from Liz in New Jersey actually is sort of preempting our next month's topic. The November topic is all about frequency and raising our vibration. And in there, we do cite quite a lot of different research which discusses this topic, showing how one can raise one's vibration, but also showing how important it is to do so, and that everything is made up of light and sound vibration. You know, all of matter emits light and sound vibration, and our own frequency and vibration can rise and fall. It does rise and fall naturally, but we can do things that raise our core vibration. And so that'll be a really interesting topic for coordinators to facilitate with the members and for members to discuss, because we've included quite a lot of information there, which is new.
Good. It's funny. I thought you said new jelly, and I was reminded.
I know. I always said I meant New Jersey.
Yeah, it sounded like jelly, and I'm reminded of the Muppets Christmas Carol, where Rizzo the rat says, "I have a little bag of what does he say? Jelly beans."
Oh yeah.
And I always think about that. And we were talking, weren't we, recently, to one of our guys from New Jersey, and I said, one of the first places I've got to go to is have pastrami on rye, because that is the area I've got to. It's a very tough area, but actually, it's a very fair area. People are very tough in New York and Long Island and New Jersey, but they're decent people, actually, and they get a bad press. So it'll be one of the first stops we make when we go to America.
Right, yes. Good. So I've got three more questions, or three more sort of big questions. And I'm afraid the way I've drawn it out, I can't see
Right.
where they're from, but it's a question that's important.
Okay, sure.
So I will read the whole thing. Within it are a few questions, so we can break it up.
Okay, go on.
What does Earth's ascension mean spiritually and physically? How are surface...
Oh, hang on. Yeah, one at a time.
All right.
Too difficult. So this is a question about the Earth and not about people on it, or the animals.
Yeah, this is the Earth.
Well, the Earth is more than just reacting to this. The energy that strikes the Earth has all been timed out. This is millions of years ago. It was all calculated. All planets have the opportunity to evolve, actually. All planets have a sun. So the question is, what will evolve with that Earth, that planet, as it makes that ascension? That's the only matter. The Earth wants to take humanity with it. It wants to take, doesn't see us as enemies. It doesn't see us as like fleas on the back of a dog. It doesn't see that the Earth actually wants us and wants to care for us. Okay. And that movement, that transition out from where we are now will be a lot easier with a lot of people who also want to make that journey with the Earth.
Okay. So actually this is interesting because you've almost preempted the body of the questions. So how are surface Earth humans supposed to keep up with the Earth's ascension? Is it through activating the 12-strand DNA? And does this happen organically through solar flares or only through inner spiritual growth?
Stop there. This person knows their stuff, and I don't want to miss it. Humans, we've got whales and we've got dolphins, and there may be other creatures as well, but generally speaking, they don't have to make a choice. Most of the animals, like the dogs and cats here, they won't have to make a choice. They will automatically go where they need to go. It's higher sentient beings who know the difference between right and wrong. People could say, yeah, but my dog knows not to do this, but that's not the point. So humans definitely, and the other forms I've just said are good anyway. So whales and dolphins are just good anyway. They're not inherently evil. Humans can be. So if a person accepts the real truth and sees the real truth, and they do their best to try and be a good person, which means actually helping others as well as looking after themselves, they will find that their transition is a lot easier, or is made possible by that. So it is the rays of our star hitting the Earth doing something to that, reflecting it back, the Earth transcending and taking with it everything that wants to go with it. Now, if you're a nasty, evil, horrible person, you don't have a future with that at all. There is no future for you. If you're a nasty, evil, horrible person, you suddenly see the light change, yeah, you can make it. If you're a person who's always been good, well, yeah, you'll make it. So it's about our intention and how we behave every day of our lives. The Earth is going to go without us if we don't do it. So it's not going to wait. There's a timeline here which the Earth is held to. It's like a project manager's spreadsheet, 0 to 100, and the Earth is on that, and it won't just hold back for a day because Fred had an upset. It is going to move, and we're either with it or we're not. It's a very good question.
Okay, great, thanks. And also from Rosa Johnson in New Jersey, will there be a US election on November the 5th, 2024? This is
I believe
the final
so.
question.
All right, okay. I believe that there will be. And the reason I believe that is because the people at the top have told me there will be. I'll have a caveat, I'll come back to it, but at the moment, if the American people know anything, they know that their current administration is not being listened to. Israel takes no notice of what Biden or Kamala Harris say to them. Putin takes no notice of what they say. There's no respect for America in the world. There really isn't. And the 4 years that President Trump was in the White House, there wasn't a single war. Why isn't the mainstream newspapers having that as their front page, celebrating the fact that for 4 years of Trump's official office, there wasn't a single war? That's enough for me to vote for the man. I would vote for him just because of that. So if there was a second part, what was the second? Okay, maybe I can bring the second part in.
No, it was just that. Will there be an election
All right, I just thought there was a
in
second.
America?
Because you said it was the last question. I thought there was a right. Okay. So if you didn't have an election because something occurred, you destroy any authority that America has in the world, literally. And what would happen in that vacuum period? And I gave examples of how America runs Britain and every other country in the world. If you cut that and there was no respect fully on those lines, the anarchy, the disaster that would occur, and America's had a civil war. It don't really want another civil war. So I don't foresee that. What I can foresee, and Becky, you and I have talked about this, is that I foresee the result coming, and then aspects of corruption within the 2024 election coming out, and that bringing out corruption in the 2020 and also in the midterms. In other words, that this election could highlight in a way that was not allowed to highlight in 2020 severe interference in the election process in America. And I don't know how far they would go back, but they could go back at least to 2016 when people tried to stop Trump from winning. And maybe that is what causes a huge problem. But as you and I talked, Becky, it could get away with it because Trump would be in office. So although the prestige of America takes a massive hit, that's okay because Trump is now duly elected as the president, and he's talking about the past and what was done. And so I can see that happening, and I can see a lot of issues, a lot of difficulties, but I can't see somebody creating a situation to stop the election, which would ultimately bring in the military. A lot of people are going to say, great, that's what we want. What you've got is civil war. You've got people being shot on the streets. You've got a country, the United States, never, ever again able to hold its head up and tell a tin pot nation somewhere else what to do. Because if America can't get its own house in order, how can it ever tell anyone else how to behave? So, no, officially, Trump lost the 2020. Officially, I think Trump will win the 2024. And a lot of the stuff that's being done is not being explained to people. A lot of it's undercover. So I do think, and I did say 80% there will be election, 20% there won't. So I've always had simply because you can never tell what a small faction of insane people, whether they're on the left, communists, whether they're Satanists, what they will try and do. But as it stands at the moment, I expect an election. Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Well, that's the end. We've been doing a Q&A now for over 1.5 hours. I think you've done over 30 questions, and
Oh, good.
it was a small portion of all the ones that were asked, but did cover some of the bigger topics. So I hope
But
that
we can do it again after the
yeah,
election.
yeah,
Yeah,
I hope that the viewers enjoy it.
I hope so too.
And then we send lots of love to our volunteers and CC
On
members.
the whole of the earth, everywhere. I
Yeah,
mean, I know the limelight, the spotlight, again and again comes back to America, but other countries matter. Whether it's in Africa, whether it's in Europe, whether it's South America, whether it's New Zealand, Australia. God, I'm going to miss a country out and get in trouble. But they matter. It's just unfortunate that the spotlight is on that country. But when we have our meetings to reassure members, we have meetings with all of our coordinators, not just America.
well,
With
all of our
all of
volunteers in our last meeting
Yeah,
on
we did,
Friday,
didn't we?
nearly
Yeah, we
400, we
did.
just shy of 400 volunteers
We did
at
a
the
Zoom
meeting.
meeting of
Yeah.
380 something members who all have a role in connecting consciousness, and they're on a really good express train. They're on the express train, but they're going upwards, and they know it. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.